Hello, not Manly here. Welcome back to episode 29 of Kerbal Space Program. This is Gilly Amusements, I think 5? I've got no idea anymore. I've lost count. We're sending back Jevin Kacker and Stabal Kerman, who we just rescued from the low orbit of Gilly. Brack safe and sound on the original Mark 1-2 command pod. No longer in service, actually. And here we cut away to what I think was Gilly Amusement 6. Lenley Sisker and another rescuee, Bobfred Kerman, back safe from Gilly. We've got a Probodoba 9 HECS tucked away in that nose cone. Even so, Bobfred is a competent engineer. He can at least run the controls of this craft. We too will bring these guys back home nice and safe. This is the Kerbal Space Program 1.4 edition of the Gilly Amusements craft and the Purple X. More Zephyrus turbofan boosters, a little more fuel in that middle stage, a little more fuel in the upper stage because we've got the Mark 1-3 command pod, which is considerably lighter than its predecessor and also has built-in RCS thrusters, so we've actually kept the monopropellant aboard this time. Very similar ascent profile though. There we go. And we're sending up 2 tourists and Shannon Kerman. Shannon will be helping out Nadalorf with the mining up at the Gilly base. We've already got Valentina we've left already up there. And we're going to try something a little different here. I completely missed the Gilly orbit with this launch, but if I can match Apoapsis with the ascending node there, I can combine a plane change and a circularization in the same maneuver. It'll cost a bit more Delta V, but this is a much more modern version of that craft. It's lighter, it's faster, it has more Delta V. There we go, look at that. Plane change takes a good 650 meters per second all by itself. But hey, look at that. Still be a pretty short burn. Yeah, we're kind of going sideways. Not a problem. This is a much, much safer version of the Gilly Amusements craft, though. So we should be fine. Okay, we line our orbits up, and because this craft has so much more Delta V, we can actually risk a rendezvous at Periapsis for Gilly. It'll make for a much shorter trip, and we'll get these guys back in time for supper. Yeah, a little less on the ejection, but a lot more on the insertion. Look at that. And we're going to rendezvous with the Gilly base because we're going to drop Shannon Kerman off there. We're going to bring the Gilly refueler down there to rendezvous as well, so we will be able to top up the tanks of this craft. We're going to send it along to do some temperature contracts as well. Why not? We've got the equipment aboard. No problem. There goes Shannon Kerman hopping aboard the Gilly base. Now, we actually do run short of Delta V to do our return, but hey, this Mark 1-3 pod has the built-in RCS thrusters. We can finish our deorbit burn with just the RCS thrusters. Look at that. Also, Kerbal Engineer now indicates the amount of RCS Delta V that we've got. And there we go. No problem. Even though we've got just tourists aboard, again, we've got that Probodoba 9 HECS aboard, and I turn SAS off just as we start losing the signal, just like we did before. That way these guys come back nice and safe. Much, much safer ride for these guys. And look at that. Just over 1 Eve day, and they're already back home safe. Before our interplanetary probes, we've got to get our comm system upgraded. With science earned from the Gilly base, we were able to upgrade our comm systems, and we now have the RA100 series relay antennas tucked away in that ferry. Because we also got spaceplane parts, we've got those Mark III fuel tanks. We don't have the 3.75 meter fuel tanks, though, but we do have the engines, the adapters, that 3.75 meter fairing, and we should be able to get this up to low Eve orbit just by itself. We've got twin-bore engines as the booster, and we're going to show you the full ascent this time as I can get to stage. There we go. A little simpler set profile this time. I pick an altitude where I go from surface prograde to orbit prograde, and I let the craft steer itself. We've got fins, we've got gimbals on those mammoth engines, and we've got no problem getting this thing up into space. The trouble is, can we get it up into stationary orbit? Good question. We're about to find out. Also featured on this craft is the Rhino liquid fuel engine. Very high thrust to weight ratio and very efficient engine for what it is, a 3.75 liter engine. Just about to run out on the Mammoth stage. There we go. Look at that. We've got 4.3 kilometers per second delta V on that stage. That should be plenty, not only to circularize in low Eve orbit, but also to get out to stationary orbit and maybe even deorbit this safely. When I go to deploy that fairing, we shed a lot of mass. There we go. Drag us up a little bit, but delta V, we gained a good 250 odd meters per second just by dumping all that extra mass. And these are the upgraded relay satellites with the RA-100 relay dishes on them. In addition to the RA-100s, we've got Mark II probe cores on there, which support prograde hold, which support target and maneuver hold. We're going to be using one of them to maneuver the bulk of this craft. We'll deploy the two bottom ones one by one, and then we'll use the top one until we get to the very end of this mission. Look at that. We are doing pretty good here. This thing has amazing thrust to weight here. Okay, looks like we might not have much time, but don't worry, this engine is pretty powerful. I don't know if I would push purples around with it yet, but hey, why not? There we go. Look at that. 900 meters per second for the insertion, but it can be done in a mere 25 seconds. That is the Rhino liquid fuel engine at its best. We'll just use its gimbal there to help with the reaction wheels on those probes. And there we go. Very, very, very quick burn. Not bad at all. Now, I've done this sort of mission before where I have launched 3 relay probes at once. We are going to put them all up in Eve stationary orbit alongside the ones we sent up for the Rick Kerman report, and we're going to use that one as a guide. We're setting it as a target. We're going to have it, here we go, 120 degrees. Once we meet up there, we delay our ejection just up to that point there, and we're going to change the orbital period once we get up there to be about 2/3 of that. And again, we can use that other probe as a guide. There. So by the time we come back up here, that other probe will have come around a good 2/3 of the orbit. And that should get our orbital period matched up. So we use a probe already up in stationary orbit. We use it as a target, and we figure out how to get up there to be 120 degrees later, and then right on top of it, and we don't have to do any really hard math just to get our main craft's orbital period set. Pretty nifty. There we go. If you try this, you might notice that the intersect markers will change, but that's okay. You know where they're really going to be when you insert this craft up into its orbit. Besides, we want to be about there anyway, the second time we come around. Okay, there's our parking orbit for the rest of this craft. Let's get that. It's got to be pretty precise. There we go. Now we'll eject one of the probes, and then we'll have it finish circularizing its orbit. Okay, here we go. Nice clean separation. If you want to do this right, if you set the ejection force to be 0, it will actually eject at 100%. So what you do is you set the ejection force to 1, not 0, but just above 0. And then that way it will detach nice and gently. And it doesn't take much delta V to circularize this orbit. In fact, we're using the same trick as we used before, setting our surface speed to 0. That way we get about as stationary as we can get. Periapsis is a little low though, so I think I actually upped it a little bit. Oh, no worries, we got it up there. Now I checked the fuel tanks on these things, because we don't need so much delta V to do the stationary orbit insertion. I moved some fuel from one probe to another, because that second probe isn't going to need much, but that third probe is going to need a lot, because we're going to try to deorbit this this service module craft right afterwards. So we're going to give it extra fuel if we can. A little bit of an ejection. Oh, watch out. Oh. Don't break the solar panels. You gotta be careful there. Look at that. I wonder why the main craft spins away like that. Or maybe it's not the main craft spinning. Maybe we're spinning. I don't know. But once we hit apoapsis, we will accelerate. Well, we'll reduce our surface speed to 0. That's basically the same thing. Nice and gentle. And come on. When are we doing our insertion? Right now, apparently. Just ease it into place. There we go. Oh, we're a little low yet. There we go. 327, 328. I do a little bit of adjusting there. I try to fix apoapsis, bring it back down to 327. There we are. I'll take that. A difference of a mere 300 meters. And then, my goodness, the camera's having a bit of a fun time, Eve wobbling in the background. Interesting thing, if we point this radial out and we leave it there, it actually maintains that orientation. Not that it matters for this game, but hey, it's neat to see. And it's a good thing we got these things up, because we are doing our first course correction for Sentinel-4 that's going all the way out to Joule, and already the new relay network is giving us a clear signal out to this probe. It's going all the way out to Joule, so we're going to need strong signal out that way. Doing our insertion burn to do an intersect with Tylo, and to use Tylo as a little gravity assist helper. Oh, I overshot it ever so slightly, but that's okay. We'll do an adjustment just as we enter Joule's sphere of influence. We'll get our orientation though, so we are nice and lined up with Tylo. As it turns out, this particular maneuver is going to take place at very last, at the very bottom. But now that we've completed that, we can finish putting up our third new relay satellite. And that's about where I want it, 120 degrees ahead of our original target. But I'm going to plan this deorbit burn here and see if we have enough delta V. I've got fuel crossfeed turned off on those decouplers, so that delta V should be the delta V available to the entire craft, including the service part. Okay. Yeah, we have enough delta V for that. No problem. In fact, I bet if we top up the tanks on the final probe, we'll still have enough delta V. Look at that. 534, and the burn is only 431. We have more than enough. So, we will do the deorbit first. Just like that. Then we will detach our probe, and we will have it re-orbit itself. In fact, circularize its orbit. Just to make sure, though, I point it away, make sure we're not going to run into this thing when we do it. Okay, nope, nope. Surface retrograde. There we go. That's what we're looking for. And then we go thrusting for our life. We're almost done putting our new relay network up. You know, the spark liquid fuel engine is pretty good for what it is. Tiny little engine, but it can push tiny little craft around, just like this one. Just a little bit left. Okay. Difference of about 200 meters. Definitely will take that. And in the meantime, well, look. Okay, that's correct. That one, last one's a little bit ahead. Either that or we're a little bit behind. I don't know. But we've got... Oh, look at that. Winnipeg Jets win 4-3. Another notification. Congratulations, Winnipeg. I'll find out who they're playing later. In the meantime, the service module is going to deorbit. I've got the heat information up on Kerbal Engineer. I want to see just how hot this thing gets. Besides, we've got Mark III spaceplane parts on here. Let's see how much heat these things can tolerate. Wham. We're going to slam into this really thick Eve atmosphere. Speaking of atmospheres, Alien Space Programs 1.5.1 was just released, and a big change is that Eve has the new Realistic Atmospheres 1.3. That atmosphere ceiling is 5 kilometers higher, and it's also a lot heavier. Oops, so the engine can't handle it. But anyway, Realistic Atmospheres 1.3. 60 kilometers ceiling, 9 atmospheres of pressure at sea level. So I'm going to have to do some adjustments before I can import this save over to that environment. Hey, not bad. We're doing pretty good here. I think that's 2600 Kelvin that the Mark III parts can handle. Oh. You know, why didn't I think of putting parachutes on this thing? I could have maybe saved some parts, saved a little bit of money. Ooh, why not? I wasn't expecting it to be able to survive anything, but hey, this has good news for our possible Mark III spaceplane that we're going to build. But this thing isn't going to be anywhere near the Kerbal Space Center. Well, we'll check on our deep space probes and our relays in a future episode. Until then, I'm not Manly. Fly safe!